Good day. This is Professor Emeritus Stephen Adei on leadership for everyone, everywhere. And we are on the last series, having looked at the essence of leadership, having looked at individual leading oneself, leadership in the family, corporate and community leadership, and thought leadership. I am now on the last of the series titled Sub-Team Political Leadership. The last time we met, I had to re-emphasize the importance of political leadership for better, for worse. Today, I want to caption my talk or session on the African crisis as a leadership challenge or leadership crisis. So I would be addressing specifically, and I wouldn't be focusing on Ghana. I'll have time to deal with Ghana along the way. But at this moment, I am looking at the fact that the African development crisis is a leadership challenge crisis. First of all, I happen to be now of the older generation. If you take a century, I am already in my last quarter of the century. I was born during the crisis of liberation, starting with Ghana in 1948. I marched at independence. I was in primary school. I was part of those who celebrated the brave new world of Republican Ghana. And of course, the crisis we have gone through to date. I saw one country after the other coming after Ghana. I was privileged to be the head of the United Nations in South Africa during their transition in 1994-95. And I had a wonderful thereafter 4.5 years in Namibia. One of my present experiences was as a young man being an intern in the Economic Commission of Africa and seeing Emperor Haile Selassie, smallish man in his Benz, and so handsome and so imposing. Unfortunately, when I left Ethiopia, there was a Mengistu coup and the devastating brutalities that characterized the country, as unfortunately has happened in many African countries. Happen to be a development economist, and therefore, whether I like it or not, you have to be interested in what is happening and what the politicians do. The question is, why has Africa generally not had the type of leadership that would lift the country above the doldrums? Let me dismiss some traditional suggestions, not because they are not important, not because they did not shape our destiny, but because we cannot, after more than half a century, and for some of us getting to 70 years, continue to look at the past and say we are handicapped because of our past. By virtue of saying that, leadership must do something about it. One of the most devastating parts is colonialism. Basically, the metropolis, whether it be France, Germany, Britain, came here to extract our resources and eventually even our human power to America as slaves. I'm not here to spend time on that one, but let me tell you, if you are even born and exploited, a time comes, as some uncle, Australian I visited, told me when I was 46 years, Uncle Bill Dennett looked at my face. He said, Stephen, I said, Uncle, He's a white Australian. How old are you? I said, I'm 46 years. He says, Stephen, you are no longer a young man. Go and lead. For me, it is one of the greatest challenges I ever had in my life that you cannot fool about. Go and lead. You are 46 years. No doubt, my grandchild one day asked the auntie, can I have 10 CDs? He says, no, I don't have the money. I said, you are an adult. You have it. I said, the boldness of a 7-year-old. He that can't see why an adult would say, I don't have that. Yes, and I won't spend time there. Moving on. Colonialism had its negative impacts, and I won't spend time, but we cannot live in the past. Yes, other countries were colonized. They have broken through the glass ceiling of development because their leadership determined that they won't allow the past to define their future. My president, Mahama, is leading the African for reparations. I was not too well and I was reading, therefore not around, and I read about the visit of the Archbishop of Canterbury, about supporting 100 million reparations. That is an insult. What will 100 million do to a Ghanaian economy of tens and hundreds of billions per annum, even in our poverty? They could do that one, make you feel good, but that is not going to be the solution. No amount of reparations, and doesn't mean that we shouldn't follow it, will save Africa. When alone, the amount of resources being siphoned from Africa in terms of our letting others take away our oil for nothing, our gold going unprocessed, which immediately, just by first level of processing, will give us 100% revenue from it. Why do you go about wasting your time on asking for peanuts when you are sitting on gold, literally? We should, of course, ask for apology and whatever can be done. But at the end of it, leadership is cause. Everything else is effect. One of the most quoted statements of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah is that seek ye first the political kingdom, and everything else shall be added unto you. That was one of the tragedies of Ghana. Political kingdom does not necessarily translate into economic fortunes unless the leadership takes control, makes sure the succession is assured and sustainable programs are in place. Other than that, even when you make some few strides, you are going to have trouble with it. Political kingdom gives you an enlarged opportunity and self-control, but it comes with responsibility. Therefore, we must look elsewhere for the cause of the dysfunctionality of political leadership that are so glaring from country to country. Let me share some of the real factors I think have been the underlying factors. Actually, our political elite have become a new class of people, often distanced and disassociated with the day-to-day realities of the people. Whether opposition or government, they have come to what is called group think. In other words, they think alike. And sad to say, winner takes all. When I hear that in my country, it pains me. You are a winner of what? Political ballot. You take all what? Everything to loot, share, and leave the people in tatters. Because oftentimes they don't create the wealth, which Justice Tuguba was quite generous, says, they come and then they take away what is there. I believe that one, oftentimes, the purpose of their coming to power is wrong. Their vision is to win power and to satisfy their cronies and family and friends. Definitely, you can't rule without your cabinet, your ministers, but they are means to an end. Second, oftentimes, and sad to say, I don't have time to elaborate each of these points I'm mentioning, but once you get your vision wrong, almost likely you will end up almost at the wrong destination. In fact, in many African countries, the leaders are concerned about regime being returned or individual keeping power, whether democratic or not. And the party members, not the nation, benefiting. I've heard over my life so much. Oh, where were you when we were campaigning? The question is this: you want all the Ghanaians, all the Nigerians to be following you in the campaign? No, they should be working and producing. And there's always a very small quarter or group of party members. They have a function, but you dare not ask a technical person competent. Basically, how did you vote? That's what it translates to. Did you contribute to the party when we were campaigning? For goodness sake, that is not leadership. That is a club of kleptocratic people, thieves. Again, the reason why we are where we are is lack of capacity. And I'm very concerned as an academic, someone who spent a good part of my time trying to form and help our political leaders through our programs in GIMPA to strengthen their capacity. Some of us have been around. For example, in Ghana, when I see leadership changes in parliament and others, and I say that, so what capacity do they have? Oh, I've been in parliament 3 times or 4 times. And I say that if you do the same thing every year for 30 years, it's only 1 year experience, which has been repeated 30 times. And we must acknowledge, and this is not an indictment of any particular political group. As a nation, we don't have a systematic culturation, education, and empowering of our political leaders. So that overnight you have a minister who practically has never gone through the ropes, parliamentarians. And we must invest in them because what they do affects us. Again, our culture. When our culture endorses wealth without source, once a winner takes all, it doesn't matter how you got rich. Once you are in power, you can do practically what you want. And when the next political party comes, they will make all the noise about corruption of the previous one. Oh, it seems that you are only corrupt when you are in opposition. And since they all go in and out, it means that they are all corrupt. No. Character matters. Not only our culture is quite important. Of course, there is follower immaturity and behavior. When someone says that, oh, I will determine your vote, I won't mention, but some of the primaries, some of us being teachers and other things, they talk to us. In the recent presidential race nomination of NPP, and we are going to have another one for NDC, someone in Pom Katamanso area told me, oh, everybody gave, this is the one who gave highest. And they mentioned the amount of money, the camps, Baumia's camp, this camp, that camp, and Ratins. And that he told me the highest, and the person is just a local committee member, whatever it is, who was working on a construction site and happened to be there, and told me that this one was the one who paid the highest. Listen, we must, and this shows immaturity of the voters, and it is up to academia and civil society to educate them. Unfortunately, in other jurisdictions, not so much in Ghana, there is ethnicity and patrimony. I say not so much in Ghana, but even in Ghana there is. It's not that people who have talked about NPP being Akan Party, NDC, Norton and Volta are now muting it, because at this moment, none of them can win elections with any of their IMF and their World Bank. So they are not saying that anymore and trying to be presidential in their views, because it serves them better to do so. Let me give the last, most important one. It's a matter of the heart. And the Bible says righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to every people. Let me take, for example, the president of Ghana. Fortunately, we have 2 life presidents. The state takes care of them. They go with about 3 state-sponsored cars with security and everything else, and they are on their salary, irrespective of everything else. And if you have been a past president, you must have the capacity to get more than you are paid legitimately through business. And as the American presidents, they get richer when they leave office than when they are. But the reality is that there seems to be wickedness. How do you be in power and do a road which will last 15 years and it takes only 2 years and it's pothole while you are still there? That is wickedness. Why do you go to have a school building which a contractor, yes, deserves his wages, will get the normal margin, but about 50% get lost? And when it happens, this is wickedness. And I think that we must place the blame where it is. When the heart of man, the Bible says, is desperately corrupt and wicked above all else. Now the question is, how do we deal with dysfunctionality in political leadership? In other words, are we going to throw our hands? No. We still need our politicians. What can be done and should be done so that whatever regime is in power, at least the functions of political leadership will be achieved? It is that I want. I don't have a panacea, but I will not be doing justice to my audience if this is sketched. At least I want to contribute to the debate. Shalom, and may the Lord be with you as we look at how can we improve political leadership in African countries, because we must. We cannot throw our hands into the air and say politicians, they are normative. As for the politicians, that is what. They shouldn't be allowed to be the same at the expense of national development and the welfare of individuals. It's your friend, Emeritus Professor Stephen Adei, on the series Leadership for Everyone Everywhere. Always 8:30 a.m. on ZFM 101.9. And otherwise, look for me in the YouTube channel of Professor Emeritus Stephen Adei. Shalom, and may the Lord be with you.